Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interview diverse change makers and wonderful innovators. I'm Deborah Levine, the editor of the American Diversity Report and your host. And with me today is Nathan Regier. Have I got that right?
Yeah, I like that.
Right. And Nate is the CEO and founding owner of Next Element Consulting, a global leadership firm focusing on compassionate accountability. He is author of 3 books on compassionate workplaces. Welcome.
It's great to be here, Deborah. Thank you so much for this opportunity and a chance to talk about the things that we are so passionate about around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We are indeed. We are. How did you get involved in all of this?
Well, uh, probably in the most unlikely way. I grew up in Africa. My parents were missionaries with the Mennonite church, and the Mennonite denomination is known for pacifism, nonviolence, living by example. And so I grew up around parents who really wanted to live and role model that. But I grew up in parts of the world where there was a lot of unrest and racism and prejudice. I spent high school in Africa, in southern Africa and Botswana, traveling a lot in South Africa while Nelson Mandela was still in prison. So it's always been a passion of mine to find ways that humans can engage in conflict that is a natural part of our diversity, but to do it without casualties and to do it in a way that creates instead of destroys. So that's kind of been my passion and what I've dedicated my life to.
Are you in Africa right now?
No, no, I've been living in the States for a while. It was mostly during my growing up years and into the 80s.
Wow, that's quite a history. Well, thank you for sharing that. My goodness. So now you're working on making this world more compassionate and the workplace more compassionate.
I am. I was a clinical psychologist for a while, for
Oh,
11 years. That was my background, and my training is in clinical psychology, and I really enjoyed that. But I felt like I wanted to make a bigger impact, and working with leaders and companies is where so much happens. And so compassion accountability was kind of my effort to reconcile kindness and care and concern for human dignity, but also the reality that within organizations, we have work to do. We have goals. We have accountabilities, and behavior matters. So those two do need to coexist.
so you work with personality diversity, a part of diversity that we're all involved in, but not everyone is an expert in, right? So tell us a little bit more about.
Yeah. Well, I care about all kinds of diversity. Obviously, having grown up around more racial, ethnic, and religious diversity and prejudice. That was what I was first exposed to. But I happened upon a model of personality when I was in my 30s that just really transformed the way I saw myself and the way I saw my relationships with people. And so that's really become my niche. Is my niche is personality diversity, and it's really interesting when you look at like models of diversity. Most of them put personality in the middle, but we don't talk very much about it, other than maybe lip service through some assessment. But we don't give near as much attention and effort to DEI around personality type differences as we do around other things. So that's really where we hope to make raise awareness and make a bigger contribution going forward.
Wonderful. As someone who has been called the most introverted person on the planet, I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I'm actually featuring some introvert energy here in the next couple months on my podcast, and in some work working with some people that have published books about introverts and their contribution in the workplace. So um, I'm glad for your deep thinking and your reflective capabilities and your passion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And audience, I want you to know we have never met before, right? But we understand each other.
Yeah, we do.
So talk about the workplace and the issue of personality and how that plays out and what people know about it, how they appreciate it or not.
Hmm. Well, everyone has heard of personality. Of course, we know that we have personalities, and personalities are different. Models like Myers-Briggs and DISC and some of the Strengths Finder, these have been around for a long, long time. They have a lot of publicity. But what many people maybe don't know is that personality is incredibly strong driver of behavior. It influences how we perceive the world, how we interpret situations. It influences how we're motivated and how we prefer to communicate. It influences our physical environments, the places where we want to be, and how we do our best work. And what most people don't learn when they're studying personality is that personality also is a strong predictor of negative attention and distress, because personality predicts how we're motivated, and on the other side of that same coin is what we do when we aren't motivated. How we behave in distress is very predictable. And so, with where it really opened my eyes was a really good model of personality gives us tools to not only appreciate the diversity and to respect it and to honor it, but to truly start including people that have different personality types and building environments and structures and systems and strategies that leverage their capabilities and play to their strengths. Um, and I think personality deserves as much attention as some of the other ones that we've invested a lot of energy in.
Oh, I would agree. Yeah, and when I do my diversity training, I talk a lot about personalities.
Mm.
Uh, it's the introvert in me trying to educate.
Well, we need advocates. We need, just like for religious diversity or racial diversity, we need advocates to say, this is what it's like. This is what our experience is like. These are the kinds of ways in which you can include us. This is what it takes for us to be successful, given what we bring to the table.
Let me ask you a question here. Do you also get involved with issues, say, around autism and other issues around the way the brain
Mhm.
works, like that?
Yes, absolutely. And when we're talking about communication, motivation, and perceptual preferences, we're talking about neurophysiology. And different personality types communicate and engage with the world differently, and they process information differently. But also, at everything is on a spectrum. We do talk about autism and autistic spectrum disorders when we talk about certain personality types that are in distress, can sort of look like certain things. But we talk a lot of other um, conditions or manifestations that we may call clinical, or we may call, it needs special attention. A lot of those have to do with just extremes of different personalities when they're not getting their needs met in a healthy way, or that's just naturally how they engage. And if we address that properly, we can bring out their best. And if we don't, then they look defective somehow. Um, like, what they say, like a duck out of water, or like Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid.
Thank you. I needed
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I appreciate that, and I wonder what is happening in workplaces that actually can discriminate and make this
Mhm.
worse against
Yeah.
personality.
Well, personality discrimination is alive and well. And we study 6 different personality types that we all have in us. We have all 6 within us, but they're arranged in a preferred set order, and certain ones are more influential in how we're motivated, for example. But there's no such thing as an introvert or an extrovert or a high D or a whatever. We have all of this in us. Where we see discrimination is a lot of times in hiring and talent development,
Mm,
where we prioritize gifts like intrinsically or self motivated. Introverts are not self motivated, they're externally motivated and highly introspective and smart. But without proper motivation, they can look like, oh, they're not self starters. So we prejudice against them. Or certain personality types that really wear their heart on their sleeve and are very creative and spontaneous, they get prejudiced against for being immature or They don't use the right language, or they can't behave themselves, and then they get relegated. We especially see this in religious communities as well. We see a lot of that in religious communities, or there's a whole variety of those kinds of things where, and then it overlaps with gender. So, for example, the harmonizer personality type that is very compassionate and sensitive and warm is 75% female, but 25% male. So if we don't understand the overlap, it's really easy to start having stereotypes like women are feelers, men are thinkers. And then when a man is a feeler, oh no, what's going on now? We start to have negative labels for that. Or when a woman is a thinker and doesn't smile when she's trying to get work done, we call her mean, or we have a lot of other worse words to call her. So there's a lot of overlap between the different types of diversity. When we understand the substrate of personality, a lot of stuff starts to make sense.
Yeah, so fascinating. Many of us women, I'm sure in particular, have learned to switch personalities quickly according to the context we find ourselves in. And it's maybe they call it agility. I call it self-survival.
Mm.
But it does give you an interesting set of skills, does it not?
Personality agility is a real thing.
Oh,
And yeah, absolutely. And if we have all six types in us, and each type has its own way of communicating, its own motivational needs, its own style, its own perceptual frame of reference, then theoretically we could activate any of those six within us, like six languages, in order to effectively communicate with different types and to survive. So agility can be a survival technique. It can also be a highly effective leadership technique. The thing to know, though, is that our tank is only filled at one of those six floors in our personality. So while may be able to adapt and speak all the languages, we only refuel from one of them. And so if we don't know how to do that, and if we're prevented from doing that, we can only be flexible so long before we burn out and run out of gas.
mm-hmm. And how does that work? The refueling of that tank?
It's We all have built-in inborn psychological and motivational needs. I'm guessing as a self-described introvert, you recharge with solitude. That being alone actually energizes you. Not me. Being alone drains me because I need interaction with unexpected things to get fueled up. So we have different ways of filling our tanks and charging our batteries. So within a personality, if we have all six types in us, one of those floors is what we call the phase floor. And phase refers to where are you currently motivated? We watch cars come and go from the gas station, and they all pull up to the pump, but they pick different levels of octane. Some pick diesel, some pick, the 91, the 95, whatever. And if we're paying close attention, we see that every car is fueled up differently, but they all come to the gas station once in a while. And so when we're teaching people about personality, agility, and diversity, it really starts with knowing, how do I fuel up, and how can I arrange things so that I can stay energized to be flexible with other people.
Oh my goodness, I'm inspired. Ah, I need to find that quiet corner more often, don't I?
Yeah,
Hmm.
you deserve it, and it's the key
Oh,
to your contribution. And within a multi diverse workplace, it's so critical that if we want your best, then we also then make adaptations in order to get your best. Why wouldn't we do that? So and discrimination shows up in a lot of our processes and procedures, like even how we have meetings is terribly toxic to introverts. We don't get their best work in typical meetings where everybody's talking all the time and you don't have any time to reflect or be quiet. Just one example.
interesting. Um, I've headed organizations. I've called those meetings.
Yep.
I've led those meetings. Everyone does as they are told.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yes.
do you know the character of Mr. Monk, the television show detective?
Monk, the TV show called Monk.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes.
I'm not a huge, I'm not very aware of it, but I know the character.
So, everything has to be in place,
Hmm.
clean.
Yep.
Do you run into that kind of personality very often in the workplace?
Yeah, it's one of the most common. It's called,
Really?
yeah, it's called the thinker personality type. We all have it in us, but if it's primary, and it's one of my primary, it's my phase floor, which means that's actually the where I'm motivated. On the bright side, the thinker personality type is motivated by time structure and recognition of good work. So efficiency, organization, good use of time is kind of what drives them.
Oh,
They're very logical, very organized, very responsible, very task oriented. But in distress, they sacrifice efficiency for control, and they start to want to control things to feel like they have it under control. So OCD, a lot of OCD is kind of on that far spectrum of the thinker personality type, attempting to feel in control by doing all of these things that really aren't very efficient and aren't very productive.
remind our audience what OCD is.
OCD stands for obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's often just a pattern of having habits and rituals and routines to be able to try to feel less anxious and feel in control. But those routines are not they're not purposeful other than to manage the anxiety.
I see. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Goodness. So, what can the workplace do to maximize the personality diversity that is inevitably in it?
I think it starts with hiring. When we get clients that say, "Oh, we need more creativity, we need more of this. So can you help us hire for that personality type?" And I say, "Sure, I can absolutely do that." But here's the real question. Can you motivate them? Do you have structures and processes in place so that they can fill their tanks? Because I can hire them, but if there's no gas station for them within your workplace, they'll burn out within a few weeks and they'll be exhibiting all this distress behavior. So, first of all, let's teach you how do you motivate the different types, the way you talk to them, the way you conduct meetings, the way you do performance reviews. So, let's get that in place and then we can bring them on board once you have the systems in place. And then it starts with the simplest things like meetings. How do we run a meeting in a way that different personality types feel heard, feel included, feel understood, and are energized to bring their best selves to work? And then I think also it's job fit. We give lip service to, oh, let's give the introverts jobs where they can work at night shift all by themselves, and we'll give the extroverts the sales jobs. Well, that's very simplistic. And when we really start to understand personality, we can do much better job fit based on a person's structure. So they're using their natural strengths and the job intrinsically motivates them. So
Yes.
they go home energized instead of going home drained. Those are just a couple of the ways that we can help workplaces be personality inclusive.
What if there are workplaces that have different personalities that are on their way to being burned out and
Mm,
they need some healing, they need some
mm,
help? What can they do when they're already kind of down that path?
yeah. We work with a lot of people in that situation, and we start with self care. First of all, let's understand your personality. Let's understand how you are fueled up, what you need. And now let's explore if there's ways you can do that. A lot of people just simply don't realize the things that they need and that they can do every day that are under their control. Sometimes it means setting some boundaries or advocating for themselves or rearranging their routines at home. And then let's add COVID to the whole thing that really interferes with our daily rituals and routines. So we start there. And then we look at advocacy is what is realistic for you to ask for from your peers, from your boss, from your workplace, knowing now that this is what you need to function well. Now, if the workplace is refusing to do that, refusing to make any accommodations, then there's other choices, as is true for every type of discrimination. Um, but I think self care first and then personal advocacy comes next.
It reminds me of advice I got years ago that I should say no to something at least once a day.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think our yeses mean anything unless there's a few no's sprinkled in.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Mm, yes.
How difficult it is, though, for some of us. A lot of this is not easy, is it? It takes
It's
practice
It
too.
takes practice and it takes awareness and it takes permissions. I think one of the strongest things we can do is say it is okay to be you. It's okay to need the things that you need. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to be alone, or there's nothing wrong with you saying no to happy hour with your friends. It doesn't mean you're antisocial. It means that you need to take care of you. So permissions are so important in education on this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing this wonderful work?
I'm in about year 15 now with specializing in personality, inclusion, and diversity. Yeah, about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what kinds of organizations have you assisted in that time?
Well, all kinds. During COVID, we worked with a really traditional blue collar manufacturing organization that really wasn't about the touchy feely, oh, let's include all different types. And we're having a blast starting to rethink how the workplace is organized. We worked with independent marketing firm that was all working virtually, and they're used to this creative space where they all energize each other. So we've had to figure out different ways for them to meet each other's needs and to take care of themselves when they're working remotely.
Yeah.
Um, all the way up to multinational huge pharmaceutical companies where the leaders of two divisions aren't getting along because of personality clashes, and they need to get along because their work helps us get COVID vaccines out.
Oh, goodness.
So the the stakes are high. So really, anywhere where two or more people are trying to get something done, personality matters a lot, and we can help.
Am I correct in thinking that your work is needed more than ever during this COVID period?
Well, I hate to say yes, it is, and absolutely, we're seeing it more than ever. With the divisiveness that we're seeing now, every difference is being magnified and made political and made a problem. We just need more conversations to say our differences are our strength, and here is how we do this. Here's how we make differences a part of the creation and a part of this amazing purpose that we have here on this earth. And personality is a very important part of that.
Oh, audience, I hope you're listening to this. We need you to. Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, I would like some help from your audience. I just published a book last August called "Seeing People Through," and it's all about building personality inclusive workplaces. But right now, we just started a research project. It's called the Personality Inclusive Workplace Study, and we're going to study this topic that we've been talking about and really learn to what extent are workplaces aware of this kind of diversity. What are they doing about it? How are they including it into their DEI efforts? Maybe there are some best practices we can learn about. Maybe, and if nothing else, simply completing the survey will raise your awareness considerably about what we're talking about and how much it matters. So I'd love your help in getting your audience to go take the survey. I can certainly send you the link. You can put it in the show notes for this. But join our survey. We want responses from all sizes of companies all over the world to see what's going on with personality inclusive workplaces.
Ah, wonderful idea. I can hardly wait to see the results, hear what people are saying and what comes of that. Goodness.
Well, anyone who takes the survey, if they want to leave their email, they can. It's completely confidential. But if you leave your email, then you'll be the first to hear about the results.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Audience, looks like you've got homework.
Well,
Great.
thank you, Deborah. It's been a joy speaking about this, and I know our passions align, regardless of what kind of diversity it is. I know we're both trying to raise the tide of inclusion.
Yes, indeed, we are. We've devoted our lives to it, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Now you go take time to yourself today to recharge.
Okay, I will indeed. And you come back and share with us at some point how this is developing. All right?
Would love to do that.
Great. Take care.